Happy holidays, and welcome to episode 24 of the Adventuring for Mere Mortals podcast. I'm Kyle, joined as always by co-host Trevor, and this month we sit down with John Harper of Xplore N More Philly, a group whose sole purpose is to bring people together, connect them with one another, and do awesome stuff in the outdoors. Hey John, how's it going?
Going great. Getting excited for the winter season here.
I met John actually through my better half. We ended up on an Xplore N More Philly trip, ski trip to open the season. That was in late November up to, what was that, John? I'm blanking on the name.
Vermont.
Killington, Vermont. Yes.
Philly.
And so after being on this trip and hearing John talk, and what Xplore N More Philly is really the manifestation of this podcast. Getting people outside and doing things and bringing people together with the commonality of the outdoors and interest in the outdoors. I'm going to let John do a quick intro, and then we'll jump into the round robin of what we've been up to, and then into the main topic. So John, you can do a better introduction than I can.
My name is John Harper. I manage a group called Xplore N More Philly. I've been doing that for about 3-4 years, that specific group. And my day job, I'm an electrical engineer. So it's just kind of I call it now my second job, is this outdoors adventure group where we organize ski and snowboard trips. We do a lot of other outdoor adventures through the summer, kayaking, camping, backpacking. We mix in a whole lot of other social things as well. We have a happy hour about once a month, had one last week. And so it's just a great way to connect people together. And that's kind of my passion in life outside of my regular job.
Well, it was a lot of fun whenever we went down there. Erin just said that we were going on a trip that she had done the backpacking trip with, and that they're really cool. We're going to have a lot of fun. She's talking about, oh, you're going to meet John. He's awesome. You're going to like him. And then we got there late, so we didn't actually see the group. And then we started running into people with caution tape, and then more people with caution tape. And then it was, oh, we need to go for the group photo. And then there were 130 people.
Wow.
Yep.
All together. And then John's like, we're taking the lift and we're doing a group run. And so
Yep.
It was
ton of fun.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Just so the group that I actually met Erin on, it's a different group called It's Better Outdoors. They're also, I kind of call them our sister group as well. So
Okay.
the organizer of that group's name is Gary, and he does a lot of similar things. A little more outdoors, a little less skiing. So it's just a little different, but he's a very good friend of mine, and we kind of co-organize things together as well.
Well, I missed the last podcast, but should we do the catch-up, Trev?
Yeah. So, yeah, for me, if you listen to the last episode, you heard that I got rear-ended and my truck was maybe getting fixed. Well, it turns out it's been totaled. That was 3 of the 4 vehicles in that accident were totaled. But luckily, I'm getting a replacement here in 3 days. So I'm excited about that. So that's been taking up a lot of my life, a lot of calling and talking with insurance companies, all the different insurance companies, which is always just a joy. But I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. That'll be out of my life. But other than that, I've just been on my trainer doing Zwift rides on my bike all the time. I'm hitting it really hard. I don't know why. I'm just getting really into it this year. So that's about all I've been doing, man. That and chasing kids, but that's always what's going on. What about you, Kyle?
Well, I've been doing a lot of traveling. So hit Illinois, saw the family. And then after that went up to Vermont, hit Killington, did that trip. We actually hit what's the other ski resort south there? Okemo. We hit Okemo. We did one run. The fog was just absolutely miserable, so we were like, well, let's just call it and go home. And so we headed back there, and then I did some work, and then we went to Idaho, and we hung out with family there and did some trails. Unfortunately, Erin's luggage was lost. The good news is she got an all expenses paid trip to REI to replace all the gear.
Ooh, nice.
Wow.
So we're geared up for the next trip that we're going to do. I'll share that in the next episode. But it's a good one. And then last weekend, it was an impromptu trip to Puerto Rico. We're going to do some scuba diving, and that fell through because there was storms and the surf was like 10 to 12 foot. So if I was a surfer, that would have been awesome. But instead, our dive trip was canceled, so we just explored Old San Juan. Trev, we hit 3 National Historic Sites there.
Jealous.
And got the stamps and did salsa dancing, all sorts of fun stuff. And now just heading into the holidays. So, what about you, John? It sounds like you've been doing quite a bit of traveling.
Oh, man, yeah, it's been a rough month, honestly. I'm not all that much of a crazy traveler, but I was in Florida visiting my parents for Thanksgiving, flew home, so we did a group hike to get the trip that you call, that you were on, we call our kickoff trip. It kicks off the season of skiing and snowboarding. So the week before, as there's 130 people, we basically bring everybody together who wants to come out for a hike in Philadelphia. So we do a 6-mile hike, and then we get together, we go to the brewery afterwards, just to give especially some new people a chance to meet each other. But so that was immediately after Thanksgiving. Then I get on a plane. No, then we went to Killington, where you joined us. Yep. Then the following weekend, I was in Colorado last weekend to do 4 more days of skiing. Tomorrow night, my wife and I fly out to Austin, Texas to see my family for the next week. We fly home the day after Christmas, and immediately the next morning, we get in the car to drive with the Explore N More group up to Mont Tremblant up in Canada for another 5 days, and then we come back down. So it's crazy travel season for us.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, I think that's a nice segue into the main topic, and that is Explore N More. We'll just start at the basics. How did that come to be?
So, I mean, I've been kind of organizing ski trips, primarily kind of like you guys with some of my college friends. I had family who lived up in Vermont, so I used to kind of travel up there to visit family, but I didn't ski a whole lot with friends generally until after college. Kind of started getting together with a group of friends. One of my friends went to Stanford, which is near Lake Tahoe. So a bunch of the college buddies would fly out there, and we'd basically rent a house in Lake Tahoe every year. So we had a lot of fun with that. Then he moved to Colorado, and then the group trip moved from Tahoe out to Colorado. Then about 6-7 years ago, as a lot of my friends kind of started getting more married off, having kids, I was still, unmarried, no kids. And basically I was kind of looking for a way to connect with some other people. And a friend of mine brought me out to a meetup group where I met some other skiers and snowboarders. So I started getting more involved in the groups there. And then about 3.5 years ago, I started exploring more to kind of keep that going, to give me a little more control to do events and activities all year round. So honestly, it's kind of turned into a central part of my life. In the end, I don't know if you know this, maybe you did hear me talk about it at Killington, but actually that was the third date anniversary of when I met my wife. So she asked me to carpool up to a trip 3 years ago, and things clicked. It was COVID time, so it was just the two of us in the car. which is even still a little nerve wracking. And it clicked, and we got together up that one year. I moved the trip up to Stowe, Vermont. And so we had our first kiss on the ski lift up at Stowe. So it was a pretty romantic beginning. But the Explore More group has really, outside of my normal job as an electrical engineer, kind of become almost a second job. It's a little bit more of my passion, I'll say. I love the outdoors. I love connecting people together. One of my two best men at my wedding kind of gave a speech on how I helped kind of foster him and his wife of getting together, and him and his wife jokingly call me the connector. So that's a part of it. Like I said, it just kind of Explore More brings everything together in that regards, connecting people together, giving some people who are maybe introverted a way to connect together, who they might not otherwise get to meet, and increasing diversity in the outdoors community. So all those things are kind of my passions. So that's how it got started.
Cool. It was awesome meeting so many people in that environment. Very laid back, relaxed. The first two people from Explore More that I met was in the gondola going up. And I just asked them, I was like, hey, are you with the group? And they're like, yeah. And we immediately started talking about, oh, when did you get here? How many runs have you done? Just that sort of thing. It was really awesome.
It's a great icebreaker. I mean, everything about it is just about breaking the ice and getting to know people. I mean, I know I was never great going out to bars, even though I'm extroverted, just meeting people, walking up to random people, starting to talk about it. I'd always need that icebreaker to get in, but just wearing that yellow caution tape that we wear when we ski gives you the icebreaker. When you see each other, there's 130 of us there. You're all together. I kind of call us all a little bit of a family, even though we meet each other. But it's a great way to break the ice, to get to talk to people you wouldn't normally talk to. So
yeah,
I'm glad you experienced that.
Yeah, it was awesome. I want to do more trips. The one thing that was really awesome is whenever Aaron, told me, oh, hey, this is, the cost of the trip. I was like, there's no way. There is no way that for a weekend trip. Actually, I think you guys did like 4 days, right? We got there.
I did three nights. Yeah. You probably did 2.
Yep. But the cost, and that is to your credit, is my understanding that you invest a lot of time and effort to keep that kind of pay barrier down.
Yep. So, I mean, skiing and snowboarding specifically is it can be a very expensive sport to get involved with. The equipment is expensive and the trips are really expensive. So if you look at most normal, and I call them normal ski clubs, they tend to be also skewed a little bit older. So they would tend to be catering more towards people in their 50s, 60s, and 70s. People have more disposable income. Mm-hmm. Younger people don't often have that. But so, if you look at some of those normal ski club trips, like we're doing Big Sky in Jackson Hole in about 2 months. The cost of the lodging for that trip, and that's one of our most expensive ones for like 9 days, is on the order of $800 for 9 days. People basically then book their own. Well, that's not everything, but people have to book their own rental cars and their own flights. And basically that's pretty much it. Because most people nowadays have these Epic passes and Icon passes, and we can get more into talking about that if you want, about how that's also changed and revolutionized the ski industry. It's for better or worse, or for better and worse, how it's changed the ski industry. But all that does keep the trips down really on the lower end price wise. The majority of our trips tend to be, for a 7-8 night trip, tends to be closer to $500. I go through and I negotiate, and we have other people who help as well doing the research. But we basically go to these hotels and or condos and VRBO places, and we basically look for the best lodging options. We'll compare 50 to 100 places in some cases to try to find the best pricing. But again, if you look at some of our trips, our members may be paying closer to $1,000, $1,200. If you were to do that same trip with a different ski club, it could be on the order of $3,000 for that same sort of trip. So it's a different dynamic, and I think it reduces the entry barrier, I'll call it, for a lot of new people to get into skiing, snowboarding, and in general these outdoors activities as well. So, but yeah, I mean, that's a lot of what I do. I spend a lot of time researching them, and then getting the price down. And then obviously there's so it's the research and then the execution of the trip, which is collecting all the money, setting up roommates. I also put a lot of time. I love connecting the people together, like I said. And that's a part of a lot of best friendships get made from these trips when I put two people into a room. So I don't take it lightly. The people that I put into a room together, I really think I try to get to know them and their personalities as much as I can, and sometimes short interactions. And then, also based on age a little bit and where they're from. And then I'll put people in the same room, and, then it also gives them kind of like a go-to person in times of like social awkwardness when you're in a big room with 120 people. You were there with your girlfriend. It's a little different. It's easier. But a lot of people don't know anybody, but that's why we do these icebreaker things and how the roommating helps as well to kind of give them an icebreaker and a go-to person.
Yeah. The amount of time and effort that you're putting into just the 2 steps you've went through so far is kind of amazing. I don't know how you do that while also having a quote unquote real job or a main job, but
it's a little tough.
Yeah.
I certainly work pretty hard. I mean, I've been at my company, to be honest, designing electronics for just my company for 20 years. So, but yeah, I mean, to be honest, I'm probably right now putting 40 hours into the regular job and probably 40 to 50 hours a week into this other job. So, but it's kind of become, those two things together have become a big part of my life. I mean, my wife is I met her through the group, like I say, but so she's supportive of it, and she comes on probably 2/3 of the events and trips. Yeah, she doesn't have quite as much vacation, so sometimes I have to go on trips without her, which I hate, but it still can be fun.
Yeah, definitely. And energy, like you've mentioned, you're very extroverted. I'm like I consider myself an extroverted introvert. Like I have a very limited social battery. So It's just kind of blowing my mind. Say you have a group of 130 people. I imagine you're constantly going, hey, how are you? How's it going? Go, 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 go. And that just,
I'm always
I get
trying to remember
names
names
to this.
I mean, I love just introducing people to each other. Kyle and Aaron have the Epic Pass. And so a part of it is, it's also, we talk about the dichotomy of the ski industry. You have your Walmart and your Target, you have your McDonald's and your Burger King, you have your Epic Pass and your Icon Pass for skiing. But so in that regards, I will also try to connect together usually the Epic Pass people to each other to kind of give them people to continue to travel with and to ski with, if I can. But so it can be overwhelming, but I also try to like divert and connect them quickly to other people to keep, to give them other people to communicate with in an extroverted way if they want. So
that's really cool. So we talked about, I'll say the 2 barriers that I've seen that you're kind of removing is one, like people don't know anybody. So when they come in, they're all wearing the caution tape. That's removed. It's like, oh, I obviously am with this group and it's easy to talk. The next is the money barrier to entry on getting into these trips. Because as we've mentioned, I think people know that snowboarding, most winter sports are just expensive.
Yep.
So you're removing that. What's the next barrier? I feel like you have a couple more in there.
I mean, there's, you talk about some of the diversity, and I think that's a part of it, like trying to remove those barriers. I think that removing those barriers helps become a more diverse community. So like I talked about the age-wise, not that we exclude anybody based on the fact that most ski clubs and outdoors clubs do tend to cater. It's not so much they cater to older people, but basically that just tends to be the community that's there. If you talk to a lot of people who go on these weekly hikes, it does tend to be a lot more retired people and things like that, empty nesters. And I try to give people a more younger approach to it, trying to get younger people involved. But we certainly, if you're, anybody who's slightly older, as long as you can, identify with the younger community and spirit, then we welcome and encourage you to be a part of the community. It's welcoming. That's the most important thing, is people need to be welcoming, and that's, we run the group through Meetup and through Facebook. And I always tell people that, like, we don't organize this through Meetup to be exclusionary and to be small little groups. That's the purpose of it, is you want to meet and get connected together with other awesome people who share those same passions. So that's what I always tell people, especially who are really nervous about coming out to their first event or joining any of these groups. I was really nervous. I joined Meetup, honestly, 15 years ago, and I kept getting the events sent to me, and I never went to anything. I was so nervous that it's going to be a lot of weird people. I'm going to walk into a room and not know who to talk to. So now when I organize happy hours, I wear the most ridiculous thing. I'll wear a bright yellow fluorescent pinny thing and tell people, come find me and tell me, what's your favorite outdoor activity? And then I'll immediately try to introduce them to somebody else. But it makes it, try to reduce that barrier for them of the uncomfortability of showing up at an event by themselves and not knowing who to find. So I try to make sure to wear something stupid. I'll carry a ski with me in the middle of a bar in Philadelphia, so people are nervous about finding the group. And I'll say, look for the idiot carrying around a ski in the bar in the middle of Philadelphia. So, so we talked about the price entry barrier. The other thing is as well, we do have a very diverse community, just age, race, sexual orientation, whatever. I mean, and there's people, we encourage anybody and everybody to come on our trips. And I think the fact that we do have a diverse community makes a more diverse population feel welcome. So
absolutely,
that's one of the other things. So, I can't think of any other barriers. I mean, getting started into anything, as you guys know, being involved with the outdoors, just there's a lot of barriers in getting comfortable with it. If you wanted to go skiing with a group and it was only experts, you'd be extremely uncomfortable to join them. But I tell everybody we have people of all different levels. Hiking, a lot of times, as we get to, I'll have some hikes in Philadelphia. I do weekly hikes out in Valley Forge National Park. We'll have anywhere between 20 and 60 people on our hikes. And especially when we get up in those numbers, sometimes we'll actually split up into different speeds. So we'll tell people, hey, if you're hiking at 3 miles an hour, we'll have a group for you. If this is your workout, like for me it is, I need some cardio. I'm not a gym person. I'm an outdoors person. So we'll go out and we'll do 7-8 miles in 2 hours with a lot of elevation gain, but we're huffing and puffing. We're talking through it, but we're exercising. So we try to basically set it up for people in that regards to work well for them. But to remove those barriers, you don't need to be the fastest hiker when you come out with us. A lot of times on your 10th hike with us, people say, hey, I want to step it up and move up with the faster group. And then people I've seen some people really get physically fit from coming out with the group and just practicing over and over. Same thing from getting used to things. We talk about backpacking. Like we talked about the equipment. So you can go spend $3,000 at REI on a backpacking setup, or I'm a FIRE guy, financial independence, retire early. So I invest a lot and save a lot. And I'm not typically the type of person to go out and buy the most expensive stuff. So even though some of that stuff might last a long time and be the most lightweight for backpacking, as an example, you can still, rather than spending $3,000 on a setup, I'll give you some things you can buy on Amazon and other places, consignments. People share equipment with each other. And, for $200 to $300 for a full setup, you can be out backpacking with us. And we organize some beginner backpacking events that aren't. So we'll hike 3 miles the first day carrying our stuff, set up camp. And a lot of times what I'll try to do is I'll basically have another 5 miles, but give bailout points so that if you decide I can't do this, it's too miserable for me carrying my stuff, I didn't like it, I don't want to go on night number 2 with the group, I want to bail out. So we do a lot of like beginner backpacking events. Same thing with kayaking, mountain biking. My wife just got into it. She doesn't like riding with me because I'm a little bit faster than her. So she sometimes will help lead the beginner or intermediate group on mountain bikers, and I'll take the more advanced mountain bikers. So giving people their level, people to go with on their level really can help remove some of those entry barriers to know there's other people to do it with.
One thing I've always wondered about is how do you manage a group that size? And it sounds like you have a lot of help and you actually break it up. It's not just one massive mob that goes out.
Yeah. I mean, that's a challenging part is, right now our Facebook page, the Xplore N More Facebook page has, I don't know, I think it's 2,300 people, and the meetup page has 1,400 people. And I'll call us honestly mid-sized for meetup. I don't know, maybe we're getting a little bit larger. The problem is there's only one of me. So I can't do things every day all year. So, there's a lot of other people who have the same passion, love connecting people together, and they kind of volunteer as well to help organize some of those things. Obviously, we're humans, and as you can imagine, just like there is in the workplace, there's oftentimes some politics that go along with events and conflicting schedules, and people want to do different things. But overall, just like it is in the workplace, you always have to keep in mind your ultimate goals. What's your mission statement, right? For me, my mission statement and what I've identified for the Xplore N More group is to help connect new people together. So if people get connected together and spin off and do their own trips, you know what? That's cool. That's kind of the purpose. They've established those connections. For me, that trip that you came on, Kyle, probably a third to half of them, oftentimes it's their first time on that trip. So, sometimes it's their first event with us. Overall, we do a lot of stuff with people from Philadelphia, but we have people come from Michigan, Boston, New York, Washington, D.C. If you go on some of our Western trips, we have people from Vancouver, from Seattle, a lot of people in Denver. I actually started another Denver group. We had basically a spinoff where a lot of people from Philly were moving out there, and they said, we want a group like this out in Denver. And I said, well, within the one fee that I pay to meet up every year, I can actually start multiple groups. So I started a group called Big Mountain Adventures Denver. And while I was out in Denver last week, I organized a ski day. And we had about 20 people out there, a lot of first timers coming out with us. So then again, it's how to coordinate it. There's other people out there who've helped volunteer their time to organize happy hours for when I can't be there. Same thing back east, people will be helping organizing events. So, there's coordination with it. I love mentoring people as well to get them set up to organize their first trips, whether it's how to research and compare VRBO houses or Airbnb houses, what things you need to look for, how to collect all the money, how to deal with bed sharing on trips if they're going to be set up that way. And there's politics along with that. So we try to set up guidelines and rules, but I also love mentoring other people to help get them connecting other people together. So, but it's a lot of time that goes into it. But it's a lot of fun just seeing some of the relationships, friendships and or relationships that come out of it. It's really, I use the word heartwarming a lot. It's heartwarming for me. So I love it.
Off the mentoring front, what would be your like initial advice to someone if they wanted to start up a meetup group? Like if you were trying to coach Trev here to grow the group size and include more people.
There's different things. There's a lot of people that I talk to. So there's people that come to me about organizing local trips, I'll say within Xplore N More group. Hey, I want to run a trip up to Sugarbush, Vermont, which we're doing next month. How do I go about that? I'm willing to volunteer, and I'll step through that. In terms of setting up different groups, I also work with people for that. So we have a guy who moved up to Boston. He started a ski group up there, and he has over 1,000 people in his group. And I helped him basically have a more open, inclusive environment. And the way that I do it is, at least that would be a Facebook group. And he would start it as a public group, and we would go off to other forums, not as much clubs, because there's politics with poaching members. You're stealing the people who I want to go on my trips. But people, a lot of times in Facebook or other online communities, they basically create these forums, and they're sometimes looking for a way to connect together. That's where when you see those people looking to connect together, then you can basically pull them into your group, assuming you're setting up trips. And I say the forums aren't always setting up trips. It's more of a way for people to chat about ski gear and ski conditions, outdoor things, equipment, right? But they don't necessarily, not everybody has the passion to organize trips. So there's different ways to do it. And I give that example because in Boston, then another girl came on one of our trips last year, and she said, hey, I want to organize this. But I basically told her, I said, think about what your mission is. And she basically said, well, my mission is more to connect together my friends and give them all more of a way to do it. So she ended up setting up a Facebook group, but it was a private group that she had to invite people into. So there's different ways, and it's not that one way is better than another. Again, those are just within Facebook. Meetup, you specifically know when you set it up that way, at least in my head, that means you want to meet new people. So if you're going for that, you're going to try to pull it in. So I really tell people to try to focus on what their mission statement is, and also to try to write it out. Because a lot of times if things get too big too quick and you can't handle it, and you have other people trying to help you, you can get involved in some pretty nasty politics. If you have differing opinions, I want to get Epic Pass next year. No, I think we should get Icon Pass next year. And you can run into some of that headbutting. And that can be okay, assuming you have a better outline and what's your goal for it. For certain things like hikes and stuff, some of the biggest advice I have to people is don't get discouraged if an event turns out differently than you had imagined. I do a lot of hikes. And now, like I said, we have on average 20 to 60 people per hike. When I first started out, I was used to going to hikes in other groups where there maybe was 50 people on a hike or something like that, maybe 20 people. Well, some of the first few hikes I did, we had 2 to 5 people on those hikes. And you have to go into it in the mindset. And I tell everybody this as well, that if you're going to organize a hike, number one, you have to be accountable. So you can't bail out of it. You can't just, unfortunately, through a lot of organizing these events, it's not like, hey, tomorrow I'm going to go out for a hike. Who wants to join? You can do that, but it doesn't tend to work well. You need to do it with 2 weeks to 6 weeks ahead notice. Hey, we're going to be doing this hike. It gives people a chance to pencil it in on their calendar. So the problem is if 2 people decide to show up, you're still accountable to go. You can't be making other plans when your friend calls you up. Hey, let's go, grab lunch together. Well, you're already committed to this event. So that's the thing I really think people need to be accountable when they're organizing things. But they also need to have the passion for it themselves and not go into it saying, when I organize this thing through Meetup, I'm going to have 20 people show up, because I've been on other hikes where 20 people show up. Sometimes you get 2 people. I've had a hike where, I think I've always had at least one other person. But one time it rained out and almost everybody dropped out of a hike and one person showed up. But we went off and we did the hike, and it was a different dynamic than what I had thought. But again, it's, there's pros and cons, and you just have to appreciate it you have to also go into it with the plan that I would be doing this event with or without other people. If I'm going mountain biking, that's an important mindset to have. That way, if you go off to go mountain biking and there's only 2 other people there, you're not discouraged when it's 3 of you out mountain biking, right? You would be doing that anyway. So I tell people to have that mindset as well.
So you mentioned your example where you had a hike planned, it started raining out. How do you deal with things that are out of your control, like the weather? When you have a group of 130 people, how do you even start to, because you can't have contingencies for everything, right?
Man, you talk about the 130 person trip. That's probably, you hit the nail on the head. That's probably the biggest example where, as an organizer, yeah, there's decisions to be made in certain cases that can be tough. But it's, you have to realize the things that are outside of your control. The first year I ran that trip, so it's been 130 people for basically 3 or 4 years. I was so concerned that, you know what, this trip is right when snow starts to fall up north. How do I deal with it? The first 2 years we went, conditions were absolutely amazing. The next 2 years we went, conditions sucked. I mean, there was like 2 trails open, and it was pretty brutal. But you also, basically, a part of it's from the expectation standpoint that I tell people up front that, you know what, this trip, it's about getting together and meeting people just as much. You're going to get a few turns in on the ski slopes, but it's also about going out to the club on Saturday night. Kyle, I don't know if you and Aaron came out with us to the club, to the Pickle Barrel at Killington on Saturday night. Did you guys go?
No, we were planning on it, and then we went back to the room, and that was a horrible decision because we did not want to leave after that. We should have just stayed down and kept playing foosball. And
you're not the first one that's happened to. But when you roll into a club with like 80 to 100 people, man, it's a good time. I mean, I'm not always a club person, but honestly, a lot of people go up there. We're going to get in some ski or snowboard turns on the snow. But again, if it's raining, and it actually, I don't think it rained much on us this year. It rained a lot last year. But people go up with the expectation to meet people, to connect together, also who have the passion for the outdoors. And we're going to go out and we're going to have a really good time. So next year, I'd tell you to come up on Thursday night. That way, Friday night's a little more, it's a lot of people in the bar at the hotel. And then on Saturday night, we go out to the club, and it's a different type of good night. I have a really good relationship with the hotel manager up there at Killington, and we have the whole hotel to ourselves.
Yeah.
And it makes it a blast, regardless of the conditions. I really felt, for a while, going back to what Trev was saying, like basically I, in the past, had been concerned that I felt like ski conditions were my responsibility. I needed to plan this trip and give the expectations to people that there's going to be snow there and there's going to be 20 trails open if you're going up to Killington. I tell you, I had people, a 3-person group wanted to come in from Michigan this year for this trip. And I said, you're going to come in for this trip? I said, I'm telling you, it's going to be a hell of a good time, but I can't guarantee you good conditions. Be aware, this is late November into December. So if you are expecting perfect conditions, this isn't the right trip for you. They ended up not coming. Last year, I had a guy who was going to fly in from San Diego who found us on Meetup. And he was going to come in. He's like, I always wanted to ski the East Coast. And I said, man, if you want to ski the East Coast, that's a little unique for somebody from out West, but I get that. But you don't want to come at the end of November, beginning of December. So again, I try to give him that expectation. But man, I did a trip to Whistler last year. Best ski resort in the world. Best ski time of year, mid-February. We had 2 great days, and then it warmed up, and then the temperatures dropped, and it turned into a sheet of ice like it could be on the East Coast. But you know what? Again, it's a good time. You're surrounded by good people, and it's outside of my control. It's tough. As an organizer, you can take things on yourself, but some of it's experience as well. You kind of get used to it. It's funny. I mean, a lot of people joke in terms of the icebreakers and things. They're like, I've heard, I'll say complaints that you run this group like a kids camp. And I joke and I laugh and I say, you know what? I like that you say that. I actually take that as a compliment. The funny thing is I actually do run a children's camp in the summer. It's called Camp Discovery. It's for abused and neglected kids who get referred in through social services. And that camp tends to we have one-on-one camper counselors. And so it's basically, we have about 40 campers, and then we recruit 40 high school counselors to be a one-on-one mentor to the campers. And then we have about 40 staff. So you talk about that 120 number of people on a trip. That's the exact same size of the 1 week camp that I help organize each summer. So that's another passion of mine. It's on a campground, but again, it gives me the experience through organizing big groups of people. I'm the director of counselors there, and I'm on the board of directors for that camp. And again, it's just some experience to help run this group for the other 51 weeks a year. So, but
so do you sleep?
Yeah, I don't think you do.
I'm doing the math, and it's like
it's not enough. I'll say that it's not enough. And my wife and I, we love to sleep. Unfortunately, we do. So on our ski trips, we have trouble getting out of bed, but that's the one thing that does get us up. But we're not first chair people usually. So.
So normally we hit this off the bat, but we went straight into Explore More Philly. But how were you introduced to the outdoors?
That's a good question. I mean, to be honest, I guess it's funny I say it this way. My dad is a little cheap too. And so, when I was like a little kid, we used to go down the shore, the New Jersey shore on weekends. And that's an expensive trip. I have 2 older brothers. And I think when I started to get to be around 8 years old, to be honest, I probably haven't asked my father this, and I'll see him tomorrow night in Texas. But we started camping, and I think it's just because it's a cheaper, thing. So it's funny. Like, so he got me and my brothers kind of into camping. My one brother actually went to Penn State to be a wildlife and fishery sciences guy. So he actually works for Penn State, and his wife does as well. So they're really into the outdoors. For me, to be honest, I'm more probably of an adventure junkie and an adrenaline junkie. So that's where I ski, the craziest, gnarliest terrain. I get myself into a lot of trouble with it sometimes. But paragliding, we were the couple last week who's really into paragliding out in Colorado. They're actually getting married this summer in July, and their entire wedding party is paragliding into the wedding in Glenwood Canyon. Yeah,
that's dope.
So they're both pilots. I mean, that's paragliding pilots. So again, for me, it's the adrenaline. I just shattered my collarbone in June, so I just got done with 6 months of physical therapy. I had surgery May 1st. I was being a little bit of an idiot. We had a group of 20 people. I was following 2 other guys on the mountain bike off this big 3-foot drop, and I thought I was better than I was, and I did not land the drop and shattered my collarbone and had surgery and have a plate in there now. But it's adrenaline. I love it, and that's kind of what got me into the outdoors. Somehow that adrenaline and enjoying the outdoors, whether it's camping and hiking. But as a kid, I think just spending time camping and biking a lot, honestly. My parents never drove me anywhere at the age of 11, 12. They were like, get on your bike and go to your friend's house if you want to go. I'm not driving it.
Same.
So, yeah. I mean, it's a little different these days, I guess, for people. You guys have kids. Is that right, Trev? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I do. I have 2.
So, yeah, it's people are a little more protective now than they were 30, 40 years ago. So,
yeah, like I'll let my daughter's 7. I'll let her run up the street to like her friend's house, but I'll be watching at the door the whole time that she's going until she goes in the next door. I'm like, okay, now I can go back inside.
Helicopter parenting is more of a thing now.
Yeah, for sure.
But I think that got me into that. I mean, also, in high school, if you want to have a little bit of independence and maybe, do some things you're not supposed to be doing, a nice place to get away from everybody else in the suburbs is out in the woods. So, we would, in high school, I spent a lot of time hanging out in the woods, jumping off of, again, to be cool, right? You had to do the adrenaline things. You had to jump off of the train trestle, just like the movie Stand By Me, right? We were jumping off of trestles when we were a kid into water that was 2 feet deep. Not the safest things, but it was fun. So that's kind of how I got into the outdoors, through that stuff.
That's cool.
So, for listeners, I'm sure that there's a few wondering out there, after an injury, like your collarbone, what brought you back? Like, because for, we'll just say a normal person, that would be a deterrent because you have suffered a severe injury. You've had to have medical intervention. And, like I skied very tentatively because at the end of the previous ski season, I took a pretty good fall and I realized my mortality. And like Trev had just had knee surgery and I was like, oh my God, like I'm not invincible.
I think you have to determine your priorities. And it sounds weird. I want to say 17 years ago, I was playing soccer and I loved playing soccer. And I organized, I used to work at Lockheed Martin right out of college. Mm-hmm. And at the branch of Lockheed I worked at, I started a soccer group. And it became kind of a passion of mine. For 3 years, I was organizing the soccer group. Maybe it was even 5 years. But I blew up my ACL playing it and playing soccer. And then I said, that's a 1-year recovery. I don't know if either of you guys have ever done
that was ACL. My knee surgery.
Yeah. So I had that done. And for me, I said, what are my passions? And I said, skiing is more of a passion for me than soccer. And honestly, I haven't played soccer since then, just because it's, I just very mildly, but not competitively. Not that I was that great back in the day. It was more pickup soccer. And I was playing on some club teams, even after college. But long story short, basically just, figuring out what your passions are. And then honestly, the nice thing is about that is like when you have that to keep you motivated. For me, honestly, I thought after I tore my rotator, I shattered my collarbone here this past summer. I was actually out camping with Gary and It's Better Outdoors group. And I fell and landed on the sling and I thought I tore my rotator cuff. And then the only thing that kept going through my mind as well about organizing the ski group as well is I have to be better by ski season. Yeah. So, whatever physical therapy, just everything was really, I think organizing the group honestly also gives me a huge sense of accountability, like we talked about. And it keeps me going to be motivated to get back into it after an injury as well. Just knowing your passions, though, really helps you figure out how to get over the obstacles that are in front of you with injuries.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, it gives you a really good motivation for, like, your physical therapy because it's like having gone through the 6 months or whatever of physical therapy for my knee, like, it's really easy to get to, like, that 75, 80% healed and go, that's probably good enough.
Yeah.
But if you want to be able to excel and be able to lead people doing all the extreme, like snowboarding, skiing stuff, you really need to get past that 75, 80%. You need to get closer to the 100% to get back where you were you don't re-injure yourself.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. That's a scary thing. Honestly, I don't know if you guys are gym people. I'm not. My wife isn't. For us, hiking has become our exercise, but it's, to be honest, in comparison to skiing and snowboarding, it's not enough. I won't say we're probably setting ourselves up. 3 years ago, I skied 56 days in the season. That's a lot. Yeah. But again, and that's 7-8 days in a row on some different trips. And my body's honestly not in good enough shape to do that, but sometimes you just kind of get through it. But you do set yourself up more to be injured if you don't exercise the right way. But again, having the accountability, and I think planning for these trips does give people that accountability as well.
Mhm.
So you guys do backpacking, right?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
how long's your longest backpacking adventure?
The
Trev
longest
breaks
one-
people.
Yeah, I break people. I'm learning to, over years of doing this, I've pushed people a little too hard. I think the longest one we've done as a group was the Foothills Trail, and that was what, 65, 70 miles, something like that.
Wow.
It was 72 on the books, but we what was it? It was closer to 78, and the longest recorded mileage was 81.
So how many
Yeah.
miles a day are you doing?
We did it in 4 days, and there were
Okay.
2 back-to-back days of like 22, 23.
Okay.
And I will say my hand was forced because we had some scheduling issues to make everybody be there. Say, sorry guys, we have to, and to get between campsites, because there were set campsites you have to stay at. But yeah,
That's a lot.
it was a lot. Like, and I like hiking's my thing, and I'm tall. I'm 6'4". I have long strides, so 20-mile days, it's not a big deal for me. But not everybody's built with the same type of wingspan and leg
Right.
length I am. So that was a learning experience for me. So like the trip we're doing this summer, we're going to go to Isle Royale, and I've lowered each day's mileage, and kind of stretched
Okay.
it out a little bit,
That's
so
good.
it's easier for everybody. And I'm
Right.
forcing myself to slow down, because if I'm just hiking by myself, I'm hiking at 3.5 miles an hour. I'm just going. I'm not smelling the roses. I'm not looking at stuff. I'm just, it becomes like I fall into exercise mode, and it just goes.
Right.
So
Yeah, but I
I'm
think
learning.
doing those trips, and how many people go on those trips with you?
The Isle Royale is probably our biggest one. We're going to have 10.
Okay. That's pretty big.
So that's our biggest one so far. Normally we're somewhere in the range of 5 to 6 or 7.
Okay.
So 10 people got excited about Isle Royale, and people really put it in permanent ink on their schedules, rather than being flaky about it.
The first backpacking trip I've ever done was actually out your way. It was Voyageurs National Park. In Minnesota. I think anything in the Midwest is out your way, I guess.
Yeah, it's close enough. It's like 12 hours from here. It's right next door.
Yeah. So, but I mean, that was it was more canoeing across the lake there, and then we had to basically carry our stuff, and then we had to get in another set of canoes and portage across the different lakes. But we did that with 8 people as well. That was with some of my high school friends, actually. Even though we did it, I want to say 4 years ago, but that was a group of my high school friends is trying to check off all of the national parks. I'm not in that camp of checking off all the national parks. My passion is really more exploring more. Those guys, they're family guys, and they do like one trip a year, and that's their priority. But to your point, anything like you're doing, were you doing anything extensive like that, whether it's a long hike or a ski trip that spans 4 days or more? I think it gives you a sense of self-accountability to get ready for that. So I think that just makes your life better, is having those ultimate goals. It's not everybody's going to win a marathon or complete a marathon even, right? Not many people are going to hike the Appalachian Trail in its entirety. But giving little goals to people, hiking a section of the Appalachian Trail, things like that. And people also build on that momentum and excitement, right? With anything. So for me, that's a part of the whole adventure group, is basically giving people a way to look forward to awesome things. It sounds like you're doing the same thing, and that's incredible.
Yeah, I really enjoy it. So like, I'm our planner for our group, but since our group is smaller, I can actually have more hands-on like motivation for everybody. So I make a group chat for all the people that are going like 6-9 months in advance. And I'm sending like gifts, any like random news about the place we're going, I'm sending it to everybody. If I get a sense people need to get be hiking or getting into better shape, sometimes I'm a little mean about it, but it's like, no, like
good.
People have different motivators. They're shame-based. I use shame-based motivation.
Yes. Good.
But
we have a good. They keep coming back.
Yeah. So, Trev, you want to ask your favorite question?
Yeah. So
All
we
right.
asked this of everybody. And what is your biggest outdoor mistake? This can be on your trips. This could be on your not big plane trip. Just whatever you got.
Honestly, it's funny. I told my wife about the story I was going to tell you about at Mount Washington. That's where my wife and I got engaged at the top of Mount Washington. My aunt and uncle got engaged there, and my cousin did. It's the tallest peak in New England.
Yeah.
And she's walking down the stairs as I'm saying this. So I'm not going to tell the full story about. I'll just say in general, sometimes I'm a little bit aggressive about some of the things that I can handle and that other people can handle, I'll say. I remember we were at Revelstoke last year, and we started going down this trail. And man, my wife and another girl we were with went down this trail, and it was steep, and there's a cliff at the bottom of it. And I couldn't fit my way down it with my wide skis. I just could. And I mean, it took me a half an hour. And in some regards, you can't plan everything out. I'd love to plan it out and go with experts who are able to give me tours of it, of all the area, and know what to expect. But unfortunately, that's a part of it. I do a lot of off-piste skiing in the glades. I get myself cliffed out a lot, where you're standing on top of a cliff and you say, "How the hell am I going to get down from this?"
Yeah.
So I mean, basically, long story short, my wife got put in a harness and lowered down from one of the sections.
Oh.
I've been close to that myself, where we were out at Snowbase and we hiked to an out of bounds section, and I took a turn on top of a cliff, and a huge chunk of snow broke off from below me, and a little avalanche starts down. So,
Ooh.
Avalanche training is important, but just in general, the overall easy answer is I'm a little sometimes too aggressive on some things. I try to do things that I'm not coordinated enough to do, and it gets me in trouble, especially on the ski slopes where you can't back out of it. I mean, it can be dangerous, just obviously a lot of people die out there. But we try to be as prepared as possible. Walkie-talkies, avalanche gear, tree well. If you guys are into skiing out west, you know how dangerous tree wells are, that it's literally a death trap door right at the base of many trees. It's just, you don't realize. I've had to rescue a guy out of a tree well hanging upside down. All I saw was his snowboard hanging up. Luckily, there was no snow in that tree well. It was an empty tree well, but I mean, he was hanging upside down by his snowboard. He couldn't reach his bindings to unstrap. So it's dangerous out there. But that's, the main thing is, for me, it's just being a little aggressive. And I've been in plenty of situations where, I've been on top of cliffs not knowing how to get out of it, and to hike back up, to call for help. Had to do it all. So, yeah, it can be scary, especially when you're an adrenaline junkie. But, those are the risks that we take.
Yeah, definitely.
So the last question. What is the question we should be asking you?
You gave me that as a question ahead of time. And honestly, I think it's funny, man. I tell people, follow their passions, whatever they're excited about. The only thing, I guess, maybe, like I told you, I'm into FIRE, financial independence, retire early. And I give this whenever we hire new people into the office. I'm getting ready to retire in a few years. I'm only 44 years old. The question is, how could people go about doing that? I'm just an engineer, which is a decent middle class salary and things. But the biggest piece of advice I tell people who are new, and the question you could ask me is, how do you make that happen to really be able to pursue your passions without having to worry about income? And I say, invest as early as you can. When you graduate college or high school and you start working, try not to buy a brand new $30,000-$40,000 car, even though you got that paycheck coming in. I think take that money as early as possible and invest it in a nice conservative Vanguard mutual fund that invests in the stock market, and let it grow from as early as possible. And you'll have a lot more financial freedom if you don't touch that. So, kind of it's one of my other passions as well, as potentially when I quote unquote retire, I might someday be a financial advisor to help people get their own freedom in life, financial freedom.
Third job.
Yeah, exactly. So I think I do that informally as well. So
sage advice. That's one thing that I looked back on, and it really is important, that early investing and that compound interest.
Compound interest, people don't realize that it's actually really a thing. And you don't realize how magical it gets later on in life. So, how to do it? Invest early and invest somewhat aggressively in safe, diversified mutual funds like index S&P 500 index funds, and just let it do its magic over a 20, 30 year period. So
sweet.
Yeah, for anybody who's, I guess I don't know, I don't mean to be cutting off your ending, to find the Xplore N More group. We are on Meetup. We are on Facebook. We do now have Instagram. I'm a little old to be learning Instagram, but it's Xplore, spelled Xplore, the letter N, MORE. So it's Xplore with an X, the letter N, More. There's a few other groups out there with the same name with different spelling, but we are, a ski, snowboard, adventure group. Primarily based out of Philly, but like I said, we have people from all over the country coming in on our trips. So Xplore with an X.
Sweet. Yeah, and I'll link all those in the show notes. And that was my next question anyway. Was like, what do you want to plug? So you nailed it.
Cool.
So yeah, Kyle, if you're cool with it, I'll bring it home.
Bring it home.
All right. So yeah, if you're listening, that means you like listening to us. I would think so, at least. So you know how you can help us out? You can rate us 5 stars. 5 stars on Apple or Spotify. They let you do that. And write us a review. If you write a review and it's not completely vulgar, I'll read it on, and you can be like podcast famous. But if you want to reach out to the podcast, you can do that through our email, adventuringformeremortals@gmail.com. Our podcast Instagram is @meremortalpod. We have a Discord server if that's your thing. The invite link will be in the show notes. My personal Instagram is @Trevor Bowman, 2 L's, 2 N's. Kyle, still nothing on the social media front. So just keep waving at people that look like a Kyle, either in Central PA or anywhere. Kyle's everywhere these days. So just keep waving. And John, thanks for coming on. This was great.
Thank you guys.
And
it's a lot of
your
fun.
Your passion really shines through. And that's always great to see. But cool. Yeah, I guess until next month. We'll see y'all later.
Thanks.
Bye.